It was the kind of detail most people would never notice. A small, ordinary object sitting slightly out of place. It wasn't broken or marked, and it didn't appear important. When investigators first entered the scene, they nearly overlooked it entirely. At the time, it seemed irrelevant. There were no signs of forced entry, no obvious struggle, and no clear motive. Just a quiet room and a life that had ended without explanation. Everything pointed in different directions, except for that one detail. Barely noticeable, yet would become the reason everything unraveled. Because what if the one thing no one paid attention to was the one thing that exposed everything? The victim was 34-year-old Daniel Reeves, a freelance graphic designer who lived alone in a modest apartment. His life was steady and routine. He had no known enemies, no conflicts, and nothing to suggest risk. The last contact with him came on a Thursday evening, when he exchanged casual messages with a friend. By Saturday, those messages went unanswered. Calls went straight to voicemail. Concern grew, and by Sunday, a welfare check was requested. Officers found the apartment door closed but unlocked. Inside, everything looked normal. The living room was tidy. The kitchen showed recent use, and a laptop remained open. In the bedroom, Daniel was found unresponsive. There were no signs of a break-in, and no clear cause. At first, it didn't even look like a crime. Some suspected a medical emergency, others an accident. But subtle inconsistencies raised questions, including that same overlooked object, still sitting there without explanation. The investigation moved cautiously. Phone records showed nothing unusual. Financial activity was normal. Neighbors reported no disturbances. Security footage captured Daniel entering his apartment, but no one clearly entering or leaving afterward. If someone had been there, they had gone unnoticed. Investigators looked into his relationships, but no conflicts emerged. Every lead faded. The case began to stall. With no answers, investigators returned to the apartment. This time, they examined everything more carefully. That was when attention shifted back to the overlooked detail. It was simple but slightly out of place. Now it raised the question, why was it there? Forensic analysis focused on it. What they found was subtle, not a fingerprint, but a trace material that didn't belong. It was microscopic, yet distinct enough to suggest contact with a specific environment outside the apartment. Experts analyzed the material and determined it wasn't common. It pointed to a controlled or specialized setting. Investigators narrowed down locations where such material could exist. The list was small. Eventually, it led to a specific type of facility with limited access. Now they needed someone connected to both Daniel and that environment. That connection came through an acquaintance. He wasn't close to Daniel and had seemed irrelevant at first, but he worked in a facility matching the trace evidence. At first, the link appeared circumstantial. However, his alibi began to unravel. He claimed he hadn't seen Daniel recently, but the trace material suggested direct, recent contact. Records from his workplace showed inconsistencies in his schedule. Gaps in his timeline raised suspicion. Investigators revisited the apartment again, reconstructing movements. The overlooked object had been moved. In doing so, the suspect had unknowingly transferred the trace material from his workplace onto it. That single action placed him inside the apartment. The detail he thought meant nothing became the evidence that exposed him. When questioned again, he maintained his denial at first. But as evidence built, his story shifted. Small admissions contradicted his earlier claims. Details only someone present could know began to surface. The case against him strengthened. In court, the focus was on the simplicity of the mistake, not a dramatic error, but a single overlooked action. By moving that object, he left behind a trace that tied him directly to the scene. That small detail became the key to solving the case. For Daniel's family, the truth brought clarity, though not closure. For investigators, it reinforced a critical lesson. It is often not the obvious evidence that solves a case, but the detail almost ignored. In the end, it wasn't a complex plan that revealed the truth. It was a single detail the killer never thought anyone would notice.